Hello YouTubers, Tony here, and today we're going to teach you how to cook a steak. This is going to be a way that's going to be hard to mess up and easy to get right, just what everybody wants to do. Alright, all you got to do is follow along with me, folks. You're going to have the best steak you ever had in your life. The first step that you want to do is to make sure that you season your steak properly. Today we're going to be using Lawry's seasoning salt. And you want to make sure you get that well seasoned on each side. A steak takes more seasoning than most people think. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use our needle tenderizer. What this helps with is, of course, tenderizing your steak, but also it makes your steak cook quicker, which is also useful because it's easy to get a nice char on the outside, but you end up with the raw steak in the middle. Just going over the gristly part a little bit more. You can cut that off if you like. However, I like to eat it. Most people don't like the gristly part. But if you soften it up enough with your needle tenderizer, you can get it nice and crispy when we go to cook the steak. Alright, we've got it seasoned and used the needle tenderizer on it. Now all we have to do is let it sit in the fridge for an hour or two and we'll be right back. Don't forget to clean up your mess in the kitchen, guys. Also today, you want to make sure that you have a white onion. Because let me tell you guys, there's nothing that goes better with the steak than an onion. I don't know why everybody doesn't cook onion with their steak. So we're going to let that steak sit in the refrigerator for, well, you don't have to do it too long, but you can usually leave it for an hour or two. And then after that, YouTubians, we are going to let it sit out at room temperature for around an hour before we cook it. And that way we make sure that the steak is cooked evenly all the way through and doesn't have any cold parts in the middle. Alright guys, it's time to take this steak out and let it get to room temperature for an hour or two. Alright guys, so off camera we've added some onions to the pan. I just cut a few slices off the onion. You don't need a whole onion, it's just about a quarter of an onion. And we are going to saute these for a little bit first before we add the steak into the mix. And once they've got a little color to them, you don't want to cook them all the way because we're going to leave them in the pan with the steak. And this is also going to help flavor that delicious steak that we're making. And let me tell you, this is going to be the most flavorful tender steak you have ever tasted in your life. I've also, off camera, I did put a little sprinkling of garlic powder on each side of the steak. And I have also added Morton's tenderizer salt each side. Unfortunately, camera wasn't recording when I put that on there. Right here we're adding a little bit more seasoning salt to the onions. It's going to give it a lot more flavor. Just keep stirring these around because these onions will burn fairly easily if you're not tending to them. And I like to go in, and once they start getting cooked more, I will take my tongs and I will remove any of the onions that have gotten cooked a little too much. Most of the pieces are uniform size, but you see there's some smaller bits in there also, and those will tend to get burnt.
You all right?
And I'm just adding a little bit extra avocado oil here to the pan before we put the steak in. In the cast iron skillet, you want to heat it up till everything's sizzling first before you add your meat. Because you don't want to steam your meat, you want it to sear on the side to a nice golden brown color. First of all, you want to sear the fat.
All right, guys, it's time to put the steak in.
Alright, so here we've gotten the tongs so we can crisp up the fat on the outside of this steak. And like I said in the beginning, if you didn't use that needle tenderizer on the gristly part of this, it would be very tough to eat. And most people would probably just want to cut that off. However, if you use that needle tenderizer on the fat and gristle on the side of this New York strip steak, it will come out tender and crispy and give you that gelatin-like consistency that you like, if it just like it had been cooked for a long time. And this step is vital when you're cooking any steak that has a rim of fat or gristly type connective tissue on the side of it. You want to crisp that up first, because it is not going to get cooked in a way that tastes good just by cooking it on flat on each side. Now, if you've never cooked a steak in cast iron before, you don't know what you're missing. Of course, I love my grilled steaks outside on the charcoal grill, but it's a lot of work. You gotta buy the charcoal, you gotta light it, and the weather's not always perfect. But let me tell you, you just follow these simple steps that I'm showing you here, and your steak will come out absolutely perfect and delicious every single time. Now, the rule of thumb when you're cooking this steak, after you get the edges sealed and the fat seared on the side, you want to cook each side around 2 minutes each to begin with, because that will, no matter what size the steak is, it will char up, or not char, but it'll crisp up the outside to a golden brown. Now, since I used the needle tenderizer on this steak, it's made it a little bit longer and thinner, so it's gonna cook fairly quickly. If your steak was a little thicker, You'd have to flip it over on each side a few more times. And generally, after the initial, I'll say 2 minutes, but sometimes it's 2.5 minutes, you just sometimes want to take a peek at the bottom of your steak with your tongs to see if your steak is browned up to a nice golden brown the way that you like it. But generally it's 2 to 2.5 minutes per side for the initial cook. And then after that, you want to flip for 1 minute to 1.5 minutes on each side until your steak reaches the desired temperature. I generally like to have my steak medium. I used to like medium rare the best, but anywhere between medium rare and medium is the perfect spot for me. And like I said here, I'm removing some of the smaller pieces of the onions that have gotten cooked thoroughly, and we do not want them to burn. And let me tell you guys, if you have not had steak and onions like this, you do not know what you were missing. You must try this recipe. And if you want to impress your friends with your skills, let me tell you, this is going to be an easy way to do that. They are not going to believe that you are capable of cooking a steak this good. And I will guarantee you that these steps I'm showing you here will ensure that your steak is cooked perfectly every single time. Now look at that sear on there. I have had that steak going for approximately 2.5 minutes. And you saw I took a little peek on it before I flipped it just to make sure that it was getting cooked just the way I like it. Now, you can see those golden brown edges on that steak. That is where you are going to get that caramelization and flavor that is just going to beat out any other steak you have ever had in your life. And these onions are also adding flavor to the steak as it cooks. And don't be shy with cooking these onions. You want to cook them until they're also a nice golden brown. The flavor that you are going to get from this steak is out of this world. And you will see later on when we go to eat this steak, it's going to be like cutting a piece of butter. On these thinner steaks, you always want to check the temperature before you think you should, especially after you've used the needle tenderizer, because aerating the steak with those holes lets the seasoning get inside the steak quicker, and also it makes the steak cook faster. And you can see we've already busted into the 130 degree mark. So we're going to remove this steak, and since it also is aerated, it's going to cool down faster. It's not going to overcook like a steak that you didn't use the needle device on, that is more dense. And the reason is this steak has those little holes in it, and it's not going to be mushy like if you had pounded the mess out of this steak with a hammer. The needle tenderizer doesn't ruin the texture of your steak, because that's the first thing that people want to say. If you over marinate your steak for a long time or you pound it too much, you're going to ruin the texture. I guarantee you the texture of this steak is absolutely perfect. You don't have to worry about that needle tenderizer unless you're hammering the steak with it, and you don't want to do that. But you saw how I used it on this steak, and it's going to turn out perfect, believe me. As you can see here, I've cut the steak. It is a perfect medium rare, and let me tell you, this steak is cutting like butter. I could cut this with a butter knife. I could cut it with a spoon. I can cut it with the fork. This steak is absolutely tender
This
and delicious.
steak is so tender, you could cut it with the fork. That is so good. Here, come here, you want to see?
Oh, wow. That is.
Mmm.
That steak is so good. I don't think you could go to a restaurant here in town and
no matter what you're gonna pay them, it's not gonna taste that good.
Yeah, they make things.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining me along today with cooking this steak on this adventure. Hopefully you liked the video. If you would, go ahead and give me a big thumbs up and like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I hope you like this video with a little tip on how to make the best steak that you're ever going to have in your life. I've enjoyed making this steak for you today, and like I said, make sure that you like and subscribe. It won't cost you a nickel. But I tell you what, you're going to impress anybody that you have over for dinner with this recipe. Alright guys, thanks for watching. And until next time, bye for now.